and welcome to DarkHour. Thank you all for joining us this evening for a little bit of a later show, but I guarantee we'll make it worth your while. So grab a seat, take your favorite drink and snack, and cuddle up, folks, because this is going to be one hell of a show. I have in the studio the one and only Rich Giordano from GUFON, who we all know and love. But tonight, we're going to sit and discuss a couple topics that have been at least fascinating to me for quite the number of years. Folks, we're going to be talking about telekinesis or psychokinesis, and we're also going to talk about remote viewing, which, to be quite honest with you, there have been many recorded attempts at some of these to verify them in a scientific fashion, and unfortunately, the majority, if not all of them, fall under certain circumstances where they cannot quantify in a controlled scientific atmosphere, and therefore whatever comes as way of result from the experiment is already tainted, and thus we are still left with nothing. But we have people walking all around us saying, hey, I've had an experience where I've made an object move either by accident or intentionally. There have been college classes, or at least fringe peripheral classes that have been offered through universities that have been taught by people who can show you, apparently, how to move these objects and gain control over your mind. So, the big question here is, where's the proof? If this is an actual phenomenon that's occurring and that you can learn it, in fact, have some sort of academia to go along with it, where's the proof that this is working? Can it all be anecdotal, or can we actually quantify remote viewing and telekinesis? Well, like I said, folks, I have Rich here with us tonight to discuss this topic at large, and I want to thank all of you. I see you in the chat, every single one of you. Beautiful, sparkling, brilliant names. I thank you for being here, but in lieu of the guest, I will not be going through the roll call tonight, and we are going to be moving forward. So, without further ado, as Rich loves to hear me say, let's welcome GUFON to DarkHour Paranormal. Hey, how's it going, Rich? Thanks for coming on the show, man. You're muted. You're muted.
Yeah. I said in your intro, you said grab your chair, your favorite drink, and your dessert, and I've got them, and I'm ready to go. And
fantastic.
Thanks for having me back on DarkHour Paranormal.
We've had quite the history, and of course, all of you who have been following Rich's channel and my channel and Third Phase of Moon and Dr. J and Apollo Stereo, you know exactly what we've been getting into over the last year, to say the least. But, you know, Rich and I talk quite frequently on the philosophical tip, and it's certainly a pleasure to be able to present to you a conversation that, you know what, we'd probably have in private anyway. So why not share it with the rest of you folks? And of course, if you have any questions, go ahead and type those in caps in the chat, and I will get to them as they come in. Now, Rich, let's kick this off. I see you already, you know, starting to move about there, a little bit of that energy moving coursing through you. You got something in your throat, on your chest you want to start off with, or what are you thinking here? Okay.
I'm just an observer. Now, I know what we're going to talk about, and I may even mention things I've never talked about ever. Mm-hmm. So, without further ado.
This is going to be a very interesting conversation, folks, because yes, there are many of us who can sit back and say we either have had an experience like this ourselves, or secondhand. Somebody has told us, maybe it was a family member or a friend, or you have heard about this, being something closer to you in way of the phenomenon. So I'm going to open this up, and we're going to talk about a few names, certainly, that you guys will probably recognize. Some you may not, but all of them within and revolving around this idea of telekinesis, which is what I'd like to start with first, Rich, if you don't mind. Let me get your overall thoughts, okay? Telekinesis in the way that it's described, where we're using some sort of energy within our arc field. Maybe you want to say it's a Jedi mind trick, using your mind. However this is achieved, do you believe that this is a possibility, given what we've seen so far in way of this sort of practice?
I'm going to give an answer nobody will like, and I'll say I don't know. But I can only tell you that if you had your own experiences with it, that is the only proof you will ever have. Because there is none. There are none. I mean, there's people, like that Russian lady who can move stuff, and she's trying real hard and straining and the little objects move. And we've learned over the years that, people like Uri Geller, were faking. They're magicians. They're literally bending spoons with their hands and, not with their minds. And it's been proven that there's many frauds out there. However, I have an experience I can share with people that I have proof that it's possibly real. And it's my own experience, all right? When I was 14 years old, excuse me, COVID, there was an album that came out from Iron Maiden called Power Slave. And the song Power Slave is a long song and is extremely instrumental, and I love it. So what I was doing, I was making a tape. We used to record from the albums to a tape so we can play it in our cars. And I would make tapes for people in school and stuff like that. So one day, my girlfriend and I were in my room and before my dad came home, and I was recording Power Slave. And she did something. She moved into the record player, which was on a stand of all, I had everything stacked. And she made the needle move. And I said, "What are you doing? Watch where you're going." And the little record thing went faster. It went from 33 and it went, "Tell me why I have to be a power slave." And it started going fast when I got mad. And I said, "Did you just hear that?" Now, the whole time this thing was recorded. So I got it recorded, right? So I start over, I rewind it, and I, eventually tape over it. But my dad comes home as I start the song over. And she sits down on the bed and watching whatever's on TV, listening to the music while I tape it. And I hear my dad come home. And I hear, "Hey, Richard!" And I hear the music's on. And he goes, "Hey, I'm calling you." And I said, "I'm coming." And the record player spun really fast because I got mad. And I open up the door, and this was a big house. And I look down the hallway, and I see him coming out of the laundry room, which was through the garage. And he goes, "I'm calling you. Can you come here for a second?" And I go, "I'm coming. I'm here with Carolyn." And as I'm saying that angrily, I'm walking by a smoke detector, and it goes off. And it goes, "Eh." And he goes, "I told you not to press those." And I go, "I didn't. You can barely reach it, right?" So I walk down past the center of the house to the next hallway where he's outside calling me again. And he goes, "Hey, I'm coming. Come on." And I go, "I'm coming." And the smoke detector in the other hallway goes, "Eh," as I'm next to it. And I said, "Holy crap. That was while I was next to it." And I'm here waving at it. And he comes in, he goes, "What the hell are you doing?" And I go, "The smoke detector went off." "I know, you don't touch it. I told you not to touch it." I go, "I didn't." He goes, "I just saw you." And I go, "I didn't touch it." So that's happened several times throughout my life when I get angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry.
This is completely unintentional.
Right.
This sort of happens, and it's a peripheral affect on the environment when somebody gets very emotional. And it doesn't necessarily have to be anger. I've heard this happen with sadness. I've heard this happen with any high emotion that you can bring to the table. If we understand that we are energetic beings at our core, and I think in some ways science has certainly proven this, but we'd use different terminology, of course, to describe this, electricity, EMF, and so forth, that we all possess. What are the boundaries? Can you tell me, right now, what the boundary of your aura is, where it begins and ends? It's not something that we see, but it's something that we can feel. If something enters into this space, we feel it before we see it or have a different sense of it. So we're actually using this sense, this ESP, if you will, quite often without our knowledge. Many people have had the experience where they were, perhaps walking down the street and they feel like somebody's looking at them and they automatically turn and happens to be some guy staring at you as you're walking across the street. I mean, what are you feeling there? Is it the person projecting the energy out and then you're just sensitive to that connection? Or are you on the receiving end, pulling in that energy as the attention is there? Do you know what I mean? And allowing that to be part of your experience, or is it even something more conjoint in way of intention? It's very interesting to look at, and I like that you brought this particular story up, because this is another thing that I have certainly mentioned on other shows, but somewhat infrequently, if you will. I have two experiences that I will share in this way. The first is dictated from my father, who I will summarize and make this very brief for what it is. When he was in college, he got very upset. My father is a very wonderful man, but he certainly has a temper. And when he gets upset, the entire earth shakes beneath him. He's one of those people who's very loud. His energy is very big. I mean, he's an Aries at the astrological sign, so you get that if it means anything to you guys out there in way of Rams.
I'm a Pisces. Yeah, we're very close.
So there you go. I mean, there's certain characteristics that even the signs share, being close to each other like that and cross over. So long story short, he was in college and he came home. Maybe he had an exam. He was upset about something. But the way that he talked to me about it, and I'm going to preface this by telling you that my father is interested in spirituality. He understands and grasps the concepts very well and perhaps applies them within his life. But I wouldn't necessarily peg him as someone overtly spiritual or necessarily open to entertaining some of these left field ideas that perhaps we decide to explore at length. So he gets into his room. He says he opened the door, and immediately, just out of some sort of frustration, he kind of threw his hands like this. And he said at the moment that he did this, there was a picture or a painting that was on the opposite side of the room. This thing shook and fell the second that he went like this and just expressed this energy, releasing perhaps. So what are we, some sort of EMP? You know what I mean? When we get to that certain point, we can just and move things in our environment?
Yeah, we're energy.
So where does the conscious control come into this? Obviously, it takes an enormous amount of energy to even undertake something like this. So where does the conscious control of this come in your opinion?
I don't know. I really don't, because I don't think we have control of it. And I know there's some people out there who will disagree, but the CIA worked with remote viewing and said that it was more accurate than they thought it would be, more than just coincidence. So they believed in remote viewing. But as far as energy and dispersing energy from one's body, doing it consciously, I'm not so sure if it's possible unless you know what that energy is, and I just don't know. So that's the problem I have with it. Everything that I've had happen in my life, except for one time, seemed to be just random out of anger and nothing else. Not sadness. I've never had anything happen when I was sad. Excuse me, COVID. And I never had anything else, either happy. It's always been with anger. So I always try to move stuff. I grew up with Star Wars. I believe, there's the Force. So I always tried to believe that there's some force we could use and manifest it out of our own body, but it never really worked. So,
well, maybe it's something like The Secret, where it takes a certain discipline. I mean, yogis, especially from India, will tell you that they have known about this phenomenon for a very long time. And the more that you meditate, the deeper you get into it, the easier it is to access this particular consciousness within you. Some of the YouTube videos that I've stumbled across recently, and they are few and far between. These people are taking a bit of tinfoil and they're moving it across, a surface, a flat surface. And they're sitting there explaining, the way to do this is just, getting into meditation a lot. So I'm certain that, that would help focus in way of this particular practice. But again, how many people are undertaking such a task and having observable results that can be repeated? Now, one of the things that they found in the 30s and the 40s when they first started researching remote viewing, especially, telekinesis was also part of this, but ESP in general, they found that because it took thousands and thousands of different trials, that the people would become exhausted, and there was this certain attenuation that occurred in way of their attention span or whether they were able to see things clearly. Now, if this is an innate trait that we all possess. It should be just like anything else. We can get tired. We're expending this energy. In fact, Nina Kulagina, who you are referencing, who had worked in the USSR and so forth, doing this stuff, who we'll get into a little bit, she supposedly had given so much of herself within the last 20 years of her life, which is when she worked with the military, that she actually sort of died from exhaustion, if you will. Very quickly, I wanted to point out Magic by Derek is in the house. Folks, we have a real true-to-life magician. Derek has been a professional magician for God knows how many years, decades at this point, and we have talked at length in our earlier days about Uri Geller, and I think we've come to a consensus in way of what he was able to do. Magicians, by and large, and I did want to bring this topic up, actually, so I'm glad you're here, Derek. Thanks for joining us tonight. Uri Geller has been proven to be a fraud. And there was you'll help me with this one. What was the host's name? The older guy that used to host the show, wherein if you came on with psychic abilities, that you could display them and then you could win money, but nobody ever won this. Do you remember the name of this guy, guys? If you remember the name of this program,
Amazing Randy.
Thank you. That's what it is. The Amazing Randy. I remember watching so many episodes of this show, and one that stuck out to me is one that you'll remember too, is when the guy came on with the book, and he's saying that he can move the pages, and sure enough, they debunked that he's blowing the freaking pages right there in front of everybody on the stage. I mean, how embarrassed have you got to be, coming out as that type of fraud? I mean, nobody will believe anything you say ever again. Doesn't matter. You could have your leg in a crocodile's mouth screaming bloody murder. People are like, it's a trick. Good luck. We'll see you at the next show,
With that phone book trick, though, the Amazing Randy put packing peanuts. If anybody knows about popcorn, those peanut-sized things that you pack packages with, put them around the phone book. So if the guy blew, they would move. So when the pages didn't move, the popcorn or the peanuts didn't move. It's amazing. But, if he did try to blow, those would have blown with it. So they trapped him into that. And then, of course, when they removed the peanuts, the pages were able to turn. And I think that was Uri Geller.
Who came on might have been, actually.
Who came on his show. And then when they removed the peanuts, Uri Geller goes, yeah, maybe the peanuts were, soaking up the energy. I'm like, oh, my God. I got an answer for everything. But I'm sure Derek, the magician, he knows that all these can be replicated, duplicated. Every one of them can. I've seen them do it. Mentalists do this stuff. So I don't really believe it. But what experience I had doesn't make sense then. Then there has to be a way to channel this energy if there is one. Now, maybe it's not energy. Maybe it's not guardian angels, but maybe some sort of spirit alongside of us that is very energetic. And when we get mad or happy or sad, maybe it's doing something to us to change whatever emotions we're feeling, so we don't overblow or get too sad or whatever. It's weird. I thought about it. I mean, my whole life I've tried to move things and never works. And one time it did. But other than that, 99 out of 100 times it never works.
Well, if we know that this type of illusion can be replicated artificially, and we call it magic, we call it illusion, and again, as you watch the performance, it looks just as real as anything that actually might be. I start to wonder, what the point of showing off something like this is if you actually have the ability to do it, or at least how you're choosing to display this ability, how you're choosing to present it. Most times, and I've said this with psychics too, people who actually have real clairvoyance, they're not out there on the television shows looking to get famous, looking to make a name. Sure, there's nothing wrong with writing a book or two and having some notoriety, at least into the point where you're getting more work and getting recognized for the work that you're doing, and perhaps moving across within a certain cause. But at the same time, there are people who, we understand what cold reading is. We understand all these different techniques that can be employed. And of course, a lot of them come back, at least in that particular arena, comes back to the mentalism magic that, again, you're being influenced, you're being led down a certain path. Now, as a magician myself, and, obviously Derek may look at this in the same way, or perhaps he has a different opinion, we can usually see the steps, the process to get to the end. And there's always some conjecture in the middle there because, maybe something was a little bit unclear while you're watching. I mean, he was quick with that slide. He did it so perfectly, but we still have a very good idea of how this person's achieving the effect. Now, there are plenty of times I've witnessed certain objects moving in paranormal settings that didn't have that sort of intention behind it. It didn't have the justification of entertainment behind it. It was just moving of its own accord. Now, of course, you talk about the paranormal, there might be some sentience, or usually assumed some sort of sentience behind a movement. But again, we're going back to what we're capable of doing. So, you look at somebody like Uri Geller, and his folly is to say that it's real and try to get people to believe, that it's real. It's just an illusion. I had a problem with Chris Angel when he first came out because he was doing the same shit. And then David Blaine started doing the same shit. I'm like, guys, you're blurring the lines. It got to the point where when I was doing professional magic, I would do a trick. All right, maybe it was an ambitious card that popped to the top over and over again and then revealed itself in somebody's pocket. Whatever the case may be, there were people who would legitimately ask, was this real magic? I mean, are you really magical? Are you different than other people? I'm like, listen, no. No, you shouldn't have that perception. You should see the magic and know what it is, not think that it's something, esoteric because I'm performing it in this way. But, then a big but, again, there are people out there who claim to do this, and I have actually had experiences myself moving the psi wheel. Now, I'm sure, Rich, I've talked to you about this, on several occasions. I've mentioned it on other shows. I got interested in telekinesis when I was a freshman in college. And I realized that you could take practice and, do some focuses and you could actually maybe achieve this effect. So I started working on it. It took me about a month to, sit down. I wasn't even doing it every day. It was maybe every other day or every other day. And just taking 10, 15, 20 minutes, just focusing until I was actually tired of concentrating on the psi wheel. I kid you not. Around the end of the month, I'd say a month in that I'm doing this, I actually got the thing to move. But it would do this. It would be very, very, very subtle. To the point where I would try to rule out anything environmental. Of course, the psi wheel is encased in glass, for those of you who don't know. It's a small pinwheel on top of a pinhead, which is very devoid of friction given the contact point with the pinwheel and the pinhead. So therefore, the idea is that low resistance, more ability to move freely, so the smaller subtle energies might be influenced. But, I mean, outside of having the experience ourselves, like you're saying, I mean, experience is paramount, going through it yourself. We're still looking, we're reaching out. What are your thoughts? Okay, so we understand, what Uri Geller could do, because obviously he was an illusionist in other respects too. It wasn't just this one feat that he would do, bending a spoon or what have you. Nina Kulagina had already established, prior to her involvement with the military, that she was a clairvoyant. In fact, she has a long history of how this actually came from her mother, she believes, because when her mother got upset, it would move things around the room. Again, we have that story coming back. It's intentional, but she was able to at one point be aware of it and focus it. Out of whatever research you've done with her, what are your final thoughts, your conclusive thoughts about what she was able to do or what she had done in way of being a charlatan?
You want me to be a broken record and say I don't know again? I could. I don't know, Michael. They have done everything to eliminate any outside interference, whether it be her blowing underneath the glass or moving something under a table, a magnet. All that stuff was eliminated, and yet she still moves stuff. I don't know. Yeah, I really don't know. I don't think she's real. Because if she is real, where's everybody else that has this power? There should be many people out there doing this instead of a person who's a magician. Yeah, I think she found out how to make these things move like a magician would. So I'm still going to say I don't believe it, But and I've looked at her several times over the years, different times in my life, and I thought this lady was real for the longest time. And then one day I had that experience I told you about, and the fire alarms, and the record player moving, spinning faster and then slowing down when I got mad. So I say, well, maybe it is possible. I just don't know how she did it.
Well,
so
I think sorry, go ahead.
that's important. Well, I'm just saying that's important, because if we can't figure out how she did it and all the possibilities on how she did it were removed from the equation, then there's something we don't understand. It's like ufology. It is.
You could say that again. Yeah, you're right about it. There was an experiment, I think one that she's most famous for and that most people know, done in 1970, wherein she was asked to stop the heart of a frog. So what they observed when she attempted to do so was she could slow the heartbeat down, and she could speed it up, and then finally she could actually make it stop. So, with the militaries looking at this and they're saying, oh, we could use this as a weapon, you know what I mean? But yet these are more subtle energies. Perhaps, our ability to encapsulate that type of energy just isn't within us yet. Maybe we need to reach a different consciousness level. Because honestly, if you're thinking about using this technique to do damage, I think inherently you're sort of going the opposite way of, what this is probably for. Something more in the way of completion, or maybe even used to heal, or what have you, find a missing person, whatever the case may be. There are certain implications, but it was 20 years, Rich, that she was being utilized by the military. And of course, let us not forget, we over here in America had our own Project Stargate, where they were recruiting people and putting them under these very rigorous tests. Now, from what I understand, they certainly proved that it did exist and that it was something that people could utilize. The reason they abandoned it as a weapon is because it was very unreliable. So perhaps we need more time to hone that into our evolution, perhaps to allow that experience to become more prominent in our genes that we pass on to our youth. If these things are inherited, like, Nina suspected, getting her powers from her mother, then, there are some lineages that certainly would have more in way of substance to this than others.
Well, if we've got a long way to go, then, because we're talking about moving little trinkets and paper clips to literally killing people. That's a long ways away, I would think. And especially if you can do it by remote viewing and take somebody out, it would already be known, I think. So I don't think we can remote view attack people. I see somebody, let's throw the energy into their brain, it goes, and, and they pass out and die at the dinner table, of a heart attack. When that happens, we need to be scared. But until then, I think it's all magic. I think it is. God, I don't know, Michael. You're making me mad now. Now I'm going to start moving everything like the movie Poltergeist.
Good. Just get it on camera so we can all witness it with you. You know what I mean?
It's just frustrating because you've had these experiences in your life. Nobody will believe you. I had a girlfriend at the time who saw it. My dad saw it, said, the battery needs to be changed. I said, that's not what the battery sounds like when it needs to be changed. So I get very frustrated when you're asking me to say, well, do you think this person is, legitimate? Is this a legitimate practice that we could use in military? I don't know. All right? I don't know. But all I can tell you is it's a personal experience. That's the only way you will ever say it's real, personally. Anyway,
fair enough. All right. With that being said, folks, that's the end of the show. We'll see you next time here on Dark Hour.
And my house is on fire.
Listen, I know. I feel the same way about ufology many times, and the discussions that we all have between us. We're always getting into something heated, and it's just the passion and, not knowing certain things that we ought to know when it comes to this sort of thing. I thought it was interesting that, during that Cold War era, they kind of tagged it the race for inner space. Once, America got on board and started, going through this again, they had proven that this was an absolutely real phenomenon. It was just not something that we had cultivated enough to any degree to use in the way that they wanted to. So with that being said, it's sort of like, paranormal activity? Could part of what we're experiencing in the paranormal world have something to do with this telekinesis when we walk into a haunted place allegedly, and we get afraid, or we already have this high energy as we walk in, we're excited, we're bringing all that in. Now you do this with 10 people in your group, you're all little generators walking into this space, and collectively your energy is together. So I mean, you see how these things tie up across the board. And yet we have the anecdotal to kind of fall on and say, yeah, there's an experience here, but all I can do is write a book on it. I can't give you the mathematical equations so that you can repeat it yourself. I mean, that in itself is incredibly frustrating.
It's the worst.
It's
the worst thing on the paranormal. The paranormal world is the most confusing thing of all, because now you got people that are looking to get evidence, right, and repeat it, but they fake it. And they want to be the first ones who came out and said, look, we're repeating it. And meanwhile, somebody's got a, remote control or something they're pressing to create that beeping noise, whatever. It is the most frustrating field to be in. I would never like to be an investigator of this stuff, telekinesis. That's why I don't do it, because there is no proof. Over all these years, we've got little clips of people doing stuff, but nothing that's being repeated over and over that can't be explained.
That's absolutely true. You're absolutely right about that. But the interesting thing about it too is that we're sitting here in our modern day and age talking about how our military within the last 40 years, 50, 60, 70 years, we're utilizing this particular aspect of our psyche, and yet there are ancient scripts from Indian cultures long past, Chinese cultures long past, that indicate and very clearly state that they were using this exact practice in their military efforts as well. Now, one of the reasons I propose that perhaps it was a little more substantial or long-standing for some of those cultures is because that spirituality was already part of the core foundation of their culture. So, if that's the implication, then that means that if we were closer to that natural state, then this would be something that would come much easier to us, and perhaps we would use it every day.
Are you trying to kill me?
Now, I was trying to break your left arm. How does it feel?
Are you trying to hurt me?
I was trying to.
Are you trying to get me mad?
Listen.
Look,
okay.
It's because it's like those fake gurus, those fake karate guys, those fake people.
Oh, God, yeah.
And the people,
fake martial artists.
Yeah. But they got this power that they, falsely use, and people start flying all over the place. I think that's what's ingrained into the culture is the thought that they could do this, and maybe it's trickery. It's tomfoolery against the in the military, just giving the illusion that they could do this to put fear into the enemy. I don't know, man, but so you said something that almost helps what you just said, because if we have to go generation to generation to generation and adapt and evolve into this energetic type of abuse that we could give to people, things and whatnot, why is it taking so long to manifest, man, if this has been going on for thousands of years? Where, hundreds, let's say it's been happening for 100 years. Where's the progression? I don't see it.
Remember, I've mentioned this many times. You know what? You don't remember it yet because I didn't tell you what it was. Anyway.
I read your mind.
Oh, yes.
You forget who I am.
Like,
do you see this?
If you can move that thought from the right side of my brain to the left, I'll be impressed, okay? I'll give you $10 right now, actually.
I'll do it.
I'll super chat you somehow through here. Hold on.
Ready? Hold on. Good. Okay, I moved it.
God damn it, dude. My eye?
Do you? Yeah.
Really?
See?
Bro,
Ectoplasm.
You couldn't even have the consideration get it anyway. Anyhow, so oh God, I forgot what I was gonna say. That's the beauty of
I'm the
that's
worst.
The beauty of this. No, so you were bringing up, specifically the Asian culture right now, and there are many of these false masters that are out there, claiming that it's Tai Chi or something like that, pushing 10 people over. And if you watch these videos, and I'm sure many of you guys have, it's absolute nonsense. It's all an act. The softest you're rolling around loosely. There's no muscle coordination or anything like that. the problem is that you're right, Rich. There are many, many people, more than most people would think, in that culture that believe what these guys have is real. So there was a guy, I forget his name off the top of my head. Some of you guys may know him. He's a big MMA guy from that region, and he stepped up within the last like 6-7 years and challenged some of these masters. He said, "Okay, you can fight like that. Let's fight."
Yeah.
And you'll see him get up with some of these guys, and it's just a domination. It's a one-punch knockout. That's it. There's nothing there. So of course, the whole politic behind this is that the governments over there were getting very upset because they didn't want this perception shattered. It's so deeply ingrained in their culture, this sort of guru magic, if you will, for lack of better terminology. They don't want that to be out. So they actually had threatened. They had actually threatened his life on many occasions. I think they even tried to extradite him at one point. I mean, the guy's had a very difficult time just bringing the truth out about these people. You bring up a great point when it's so ingrained in the culture. Now, to kind of get back to one of the questions you had asked here, where's the progression? If people have been doing this for years and years, where's the evolution of this? Well, as I've mentioned many times before, there is certainly a certain cycle that's been observed in way of history where our consciousness is sometimes up where you would think you would want it to be. We're enlightened, we're aware, we're connected with nature, we're in that pocket of, that godlike energy, that godlike experience, the Christ consciousness. And then somehow, and it goes with the earth too, it's not just our species, everything starts to sort of fall asleep in way of knowledge and information. So you get down to that, bottom of the wheel, and you have the period of what's misnomered as the Dark Ages. No writing, very light language when it comes to certain communication. There's no record of history being kept. I mean, everybody sort of seems to be in that dark moment, just in a survival, primordial sort of existence. Then as they come out of that, we start learning and remembering. That's what they call it. Okay, people were, touting this as some sort of education in life, if you will. It's, again, an awakening where we remember our intrinsic abilities. And these conversations, they take a long time. These existences, these lifetimes, they take a very long time to get through and accumulate that remembrance. Now, to kind of kick it all in the shoe here, honestly, there are many people who will say this is what we've chosen. If you know everything and are limitless as a spirit, okay? Again, let me repeat that. If you know everything that there is to know and you have no limitation whatsoever as a spirit, what's the next best option to create for you in way of experience?
I don't know.
To create a world or an experience that is limited, wherein you can die, wherein you can have and experience all the things opposite of what you already are. So, in that, not only have we decided to have that particular experience, we've decided to say, how can we anchor the knowledge that we have in perhaps spiritual form into the physical body and then live that experience through physicality. So physicality isn't just, a place or, a vibration in a certain way. It's actually a malleable reality that whatever we bring to it in way of our enlightenment and information, we're actually boosting this particular reality into a different existence, into a different overtone along with us. Again, getting us closer to those higher vibrations and what we might understand to be spirit. For all we know, this physical reality one day might go poof and disappears like the Incans or the Mayans and, goes into a different dimension. I don't know.
You said something, and I don't know if I heard it correctly, but are you saying that the information from people who had this knowledge is put into the next generation of unborn people? I mean, how does that happen? That's what I hear you saying, that it's passed down, but it would only be passed down as if they talked about it to their older generations. But I don't think people live long enough to see that evolution and to give that information over. I think it does get lost over time. And let's say it doesn't. Let's say the stories are passed down and the knowledge is passed down through generation. How is that given to the next generation over and over, and to keep it on the same field as it was when it first was explained? I don't know how that can happen. There's always changes that happen throughout generations. They don't believe something, so they change it a little bit. And now the recipe isn't the same. The ingredients aren't the same as when it first heard it. It's like the game telephone. So I don't know, man. If you're talking about something that would definitely have to be in these people's lives for generations and generations and generations and accurately taught. So I don't know. I mean, and then what? And then does that mean they're evolving more and more because they're getting the information over a longer period of time? Or do they just believe it so much that's their way of life and they believe it but nobody else will?
I think, the most accepted explanation to that question that you're posing, and yeah, it's still very left field, people turn to cellular memory. So the idea is that everything that you experience, every feeling, every sight, sound, touch, everything that you go through in life is recorded within your cells, and this is passed on to whatever future generation. So you're just, one link.
No.
But
how are you saying that's being passed on? Through words?
No, through genes, through actual cells.
Come on, man. You're saying that our cells and everything's recorded and passed on like past lives? People can, call up their past lives?
Haven't we already discussed perhaps people recalling their past lives might be cellular memory? So yes, I
understand that.
Yeah,
you're suggesting it. Okay, you're not saying it's fact.
I'm not saying it's fact. I'm saying one of the more accepted explanations, although still being left field. This is what people.
I just want to
explain.
make sure.
Yeah,
okay.
No.
Well, now that makes sense.
Yeah, we can't certainly sit on fact until we again can quantify it. I don't need to tell you that,
But if you were to talk to those people, they'll tell you they have the facts, and then you'll say, "Show me," and it doesn't work.
Well, that's the problem. That's where this field gets really muddied. I'd love to meet somebody who sits and say, "Hey, I have the answers, and I'll give them to you anecdotally." That's fine. I can compile an entire resume full of certain experiences people have had, or a roster, I should say, but. Where's the proof? Where is, the instruction where I can try it, I can pass it on to somebody else, and we can, go by example. I mean, yes, everything does have to be repeated. Not that it didn't happen the first time, it's just an anomaly, but if we want to keep it consistent with our reality, anchor that particular phenomenon within our reality, it has to be repeatable.
Well, that's called, evidence. And it's very weak, and it's different depending on the culture, but they all use the same tools that a magician would use. You can see the trick coming and you understand what they're doing before they get to the end. So, you guys can see that stuff. Magicians can, but to the regular person who's not a magician or isn't into this stuff, and that's most of the population, they think it's the most amazing thing they've ever seen. Now, with that being said, and calling people out on their BS, there are paranormal experiences I have, you have, many of us have had that we can't explain. Maybe we're manifesting it in our own homes. I told you recently about some things that are happening in my place. Didn't happen when I first got here, but started happening about a month after. And they're weird. They're really, and I haven't even told you all of them. But, hearing someone's slippers on my kitchen floor as they shuffle along, hearing someone breathing in the next room, wheezing, like that. There's only been 2 owners in this home. One stayed here for 33 years and the other one for 10. And nobody died as far as they know. So I don't know what's going on, but there's some energy that I think is in the earth and comes out. And I don't know if it's because my house sits on top of a certain type of quartz or whatever type of ground that's underneath me. I don't know what it is, but I don't know, man. I think that this world is more paranormal than normal, and we just don't understand it. And I don't think we ever will. And Michael, I don't think we'll ever evolve to that point. Maybe 1,000 years into the future it would have to happen, I think. But I think it would have happened by now. And if it does, and if we needed it, it would be a part of our lives. We don't need it because we have hands, we have feet. We can move things with those.
Very true. And I think, Well, I think some of these concepts, the Illuminati had, and other organizations that are in the way of ancient study, let's say, they've had a lot of this information, and from what I understand, they didn't release the majority of this information because at the time they knew that the temptation to misuse something like this was very great. Now, I'm going to give you a story that
Okay.
I'm going to precursor by saying this is not something I encourage. It's not an experience that I would ever seek to repeat. And in a certain sense, although I take responsibility for what I did, it was kind of accidental because I was not aware of perhaps my effect that I would have on a certain situation. And of course, it's still in the realm of belief, but if you listen to the way the events unfolded a little bit, you sort of draw a conclusion. And I could sit here and say, as I go into this story, I wish this was not a story I had to tell. So very quickly here, I dated somebody many years ago, and long story short, the relationship was a very tumultuous one, and it was because this person was mentally unstable, and it's not something that I realized until much later, but given the point I was in my life, I thought you're supposed to just make things work and so forth. But at any rate, she ended up treating me very, very badly, and I kind of witnessed the very worst of it towards the end of the relationship when she ended up, breaking up with me and just kicking me out of the house with nowhere to go and so forth. You could, ask anybody who's been in the situation, they'll give you something similar. But I had an anger within me that was so intense. It's been rivaled since, but I've expressed it a different way. And because of this experience, I've learned to do that. I was driving home from work one day. This was about a week after. And I say driving home because it was 2 days later that I went to work and I found somebody and they said, hey, we'll rent a room out for you. And guess what? That's where I am today. Been in the same household. And I'm driving back and I'm thinking about, her just sitting in the living room. And I had this very clear image of her just sitting on the couch like this, not necessarily sad about, something that she's lost with me, but just being upset that she's made a life change, whatever the case may be. I could feel this sort of wayward sorrow that really kind of actually pissed me off a little bit more because it didn't have anything to do with, the years that we spent together. Whatever. Again, you've got emotion at the helm here. Keep this in mind, folks. So again, I'm driving back. I'm seeing her in my mind, and it's so clear. And all of a sudden, it was like I was holding back. I said, you know what? Fuck it. And I just let myself open up into that space. And what happened with this anger, I was consciously directing objects to start floating up into the room and start spinning as fast as I could make them spin in a whirlwind of absolute rage and frustration and anger. Like I'm talking about this now, and I can still feel how charged and angry I was at that moment. So as I'm doing this and I'm just letting myself go, I keep getting this feeling like you're not doing the right thing. You shouldn't be doing this right now. And I'm thinking, why not? It's just a thought. I'm just expressing myself. I'm venting in my mind. I'm getting angry, having this. I'm feeling a little bit better by getting this out. Still in my mind, it's like this is not right. So I kind of backed off at one point where I started to get a little tired, and I was like, wow. I kind of sat back, kind of came out of it for a second. I was like, what the hell was that? I feel a little better, but man, I feel depleted. Whatever, continued on my day. Not thinking too much of it. I'm just having a thought. About a month later, I had learned that within, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks, she had another guy move in with her and whatever. And this was one of her friends who I don't know why they were telling me at the time. Maybe because I knew who he was. But they said, yeah, she had a tough time during the first week that you guys, weren't together. I said, what do you mean? She goes, I forget if she actually told me which day it was, but I want to say it was during the middle of the week, which was exactly when I was doing what I was doing. She said she had a mental breakdown, and she was actually committed for 4 days, whatever the case was. I was like, really? And as I thought about this, I actually put it together with the information this person gave me and the time that I knew that I had done this. I put it together. We were very, very close to when these events coincided, if it wasn't exact. And I got fucking scared. that I might have actually had something to do with that. So whether I did or not, I learned a very valuable lesson that you can't let that sort of thing overtake you. But again, as we're talking about this subject at large, what we're getting into now, could that have been, in what I've just told you, perhaps an expression of that in the more negative sense, where we're influencing an environment that we're not immediately in because we're, on the sleigh of emotion?
I hate to one-up you.
Oh, please do.
I would never want to do that. And I've never told this story to anybody except one other person. But what you said triggered the memory of why I'm telling this story. And I'm just going to say this because it's happened more than once. A long time ago, when I was 21, 22, I dated this girl, Shelly. And we got along very well. And after a few months, I was hearing rumors that she slept around with this guy named Robert Hooker. And we all worked together in the same grocery store, right? So one day, I see them, my girlfriend and Robert, talking very closely and getting chummy. So I, of course, and, back then, I was like, so I heard you da-da-da-da-da. And Shelly's like, no, it was my fault. And I said, no, it's his fault. He knew we were dating, and really it's her fault. But you know how guys are. So we were in the cereal aisle, and I was very angry. And he said, oh, yeah, what are you going to do about it? And, I hit him, and I picked him up, and we got in a fight in the cereal aisle. And well, I wished death upon Robert Hooker. I wanted him dead. And that night he hung himself.
Oh, shit. Well, I wonder, too, if, and I'll put this out there in way of possibility.
But that's not the first time I've done that. I've wished death on other people and they died. It's
See,
weird.
I think we're stronger than we think. And I do think that, all right, I'm not going to say that we're immediately responsible for it. What I'm going to say is that because I believe that every moment that we are existing, whether we're sleeping and waking state, doesn't matter. We're making certain decisions. In each one of these decisions, if every possibility exists that ever will exist, all you're really doing is sort of following a path based on your choices. Obviously, what this looks like is infinite in way of timelines, but with each choice, you're creating your own sort of linear timeline by, jumping on these different paths. So, in a sense, when you start to will something like that, could it be that you simply jump on the timeline where he kills himself that way at that time, and you just happen to will yourself on that timeline if you weren't directly putting the energy on him, envisioning his neck closing, envisioning a black stake through his heart, something like that. That's more intentional, right? But you just had the wish. So maybe you just wished that reality into your life. What do you think?
I don't know. Just telling the story got me all emotional about it. Yeah, I think that's possible because I've done it before and I stopped doing that because it's happened within a day of me wishing that this person would die or this person would have complications in their life, that their whole life would be messed up. And every single time I've wished it or have envisioned it, it has happened. And that's not supposed to be that way. It's not supposed to work like that. You can't change somebody's destiny. But as I sit here and tell you about these things, which is why I'm in this field, is for many other reasons than UFOs. I mean, there's some things that I've never, ever talked about and that I've told you that I never spoke about in public because, people have a certain perception about you. And if you start getting into saying, hey, I could kill people with my thoughts, they'd be like, what the hell's this guy all about? It's like, what an idiot. Nobody can do that. But I'm telling you, I know of 3 times and more times than that where nobody did die, had very, very bad luck. And I've done it recently. I did it on purpose and yeah. We'll see what happens. But
at what point when you started to kind of notice that, you put that out there, then you'd see something come to fruition. At what
The
point did
third
you say,
time.
okay? And what did you feel when you sort of realized that perhaps you were having influence on these events?
Well, back then, I didn't think about it at all. I said, good. Good for them. I'm glad they're having a miserable life because they made my life miserable.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't think about it at all. I never, ever thought about it. I just knew in a quick thought, you can think a lot of things in almost an instant, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I had my satisfaction. I had said something I wanted to happen, and one way or another, bad luck ensued. And the only feeling I had was pure elation. So I didn't think about it like, wow, I could do this. And it's not something of course I put it as a coincidence.
Sure.
You know, these are people who were assholes anyway, right? And, you know, you add a little more stress to somebody who's already stressed out, they may do something that'll create this bad luck in their lives or perhaps take themselves out.
Mm-hmm.
And no, Robert hung himself in his closet with his belt. It wasn't auto-erotification, whatever that is, auto-asphyxiation, as some people jokingly said.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it never used to hit me emotionally until years later, like 20 years, 30 years later. I would think about these things, and, you know, being in the field, we'd talk about things like we're doing now, and then I'd have, you know, recall of something that I said and it actually came true. And you know, like telling that story, I haven't told that story in a long time, probably just years after it happened, you know, a year or two later. People would be like, hey, whatever happened to Robert, or whatever happened to Ken, or whatever happened to this person. Yeah, it's weird.
Well, you know, not for nothing, but I've always had this feeling through my whole life. I would say, well, let's be fair. Let's say since around the age of like 10 or 11, I started becoming aware that the way that I directed my thoughts could potentially really influence somebody. And I used to look at this in certain ways too. Maybe I would, there was a time where I was taking Taekwondo, and it was towards the end of my tenure there at this particular studio. And, you know, I was not in great standing with the sensei there. He just, for whatever reason, just didn't like me. And, you know, so I overheard him saying some things about my progression, how he was going to keep that from happening no matter what I did. So I got turned off, and I'd go sit upstairs for an hour and a half and skip Taekwondo. I did this for a number of months because I just didn't want to go. And what I would do up there, I didn't have anything with me other than my gear, my sparring gear. So, you know, I would find like a piece of paper on the floor, and I would think to myself, you know, if I stared at this paper for long enough, is it absorbing, you know, it could, you know, some of my thought, or, you know, could I like bore a hole in this? And of course I was never able to do it, but I always had this thought behind me that you could. Now I went to a psychic, and I've mentioned this on many shows before, the first time when I was 12. And one of the things that the psychic had said to me, and I had been with her for many years afterwards, she was probably one of the most accurate clairvoyants I'd ever known, became a very good friend of mine. Her name was Joyce Orcutt. And she said, you know, you've spent many lifetimes paying back a certain debt, if you will, because you've been, and the way she put it to me was that you've been very, very bad in other lifetimes or other existences. And she went on to allude to some of this having to do with perhaps like mental power or spiritual power or magic or something along those lines. Of course, none of this I really understood out of the realm of, you know, the concept itself. I didn't see how that applied to me at the time. But again, I've always had this hesitation, you know, whenever I get into a confrontation, and it's, believe me, it's not often, but I've certainly been there as you have, Rich, where, you know, somebody just tests you enough. And I've always had this cognizance, the first thing I want to do is hurt them through thought. Like, it's almost like I want to send out this knife and go right through the heart and just keep it there, grind it, like envision it, put the energy into it, the passion into it. And I feel like if I were to do it, I could actually make that happen. And that scared the shit out of me. And I wonder, you know, if what she was mentioning to me had to do with what I've been feeling in this lifetime, because, you know, if we're able to do that and we're capable of such destruction, well, clearly we're using it, you know, that sort of gift the wrong way. You know, I don't know who's judging, but, you know, in terms of what we'd like to create for reality, we're obviously using it the wrong way that way. But it's certainly important to keep even this, I think, certain information in the right hands, because let's say you gave this to an entire prison of inmates. Well, next thing you know, you have chaos not only in the jail, but in the town and whatever else they decide to project themselves. So, yeah, right now we're still very divided in way of vibration. It's not about who should or shouldn't have the information or the ability to do things. There's always a locking key when it comes to consciousness. If you don't have the consciousness, you don't have the physical energy. You don't have it to give to that practice. Well, let me ask you this, Rich. Okay, and, please, I love your pragmatic view when it comes to these sort of things and your critical thinking. A lot of the examples that we've seen in the way of people moving certain objects, all right, we've seen them, take it, put it up, take their hands away, focus on it, thing moves a little bit, they're shaking, all right? And you've also described how they start, waving their hands over the things. Nina would do something like this, and next thing you know, the thing would be bouncing up. And there are other people who will, let's say this is the piece of tinfoil. Instead of just, putting the hand here or putting the hand around, two hands around it, they'll actually do like this kind of motion, like some sort of outward motion, the direction that they're choosing to push this.
Sure.
Now, if it's not wind or, disturbance of air that's pushing this, and I think in some cases, the way I've watched it, it didn't look like that was what they were utilizing if they were faking it. Again, this is purely opinion here. I don't even have the answer to this. What could be the purpose of having to actually move your physical hand? You know what I mean? If you're just using energy and you should be able to project it out from, any way you wanted to, making an omni-sphere of sort. Well, why would people be doing this if they're not hoaxing it? Just, again, opinion, thoughts.
One word: showmanship. That's all it is. Without giving the showmanship, you can't sell it. How are you going to sell it if you just do this? That doesn't really make me feel like you're doing anything. Just, but you go like this. Now I'm like, ooh, ah.
You get the visual.
Ah. Right? When you saw Star Wars and the Force, what did he always do? He had to put his hand out there, close his eyes. Even Yoda had to do it. And they're bringing it closer. It's all showmanship. That's why when people do that stuff, I kind of just look at it as entertainment. And I try to figure out how they're really doing the trick. This is it makes me angry. You wouldn't like me when I'm angry. But I'm serious. People die.
It's a two-capiche show.
It is. What? Is it capiche? It is a two-capiche show now. I do the capiches.
Yeah, well, I let you. I didn't say it.
Excuse me?
I said it was a two-capiche show, and you filled it out.
But there wasn't where was the first capiche?
Well, you wouldn't like me if I'm mad. It's a loose reference, but we're getting there.
All right, I know. I'm just buying time here. But I look at it as just pure entertainment when they start moving their hands like that. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's necessary to do that. Or it's part of creating the breeze that'll make that thing move, which this really gives very little breeze. I mean, to go in the direction and do that, I mean, there's really nothing, pretty much. But if you can just get a little bit of it, and maybe that's why they go, because it's such a small amount of air getting in there.
So subtle. I think if there's any... Yeah, go ahead.
No, that's it.
I think if there's any logic to that sort of movement... Well, first of all, I err on the side of what you're saying there. Certainly it is a visual reinforcement, possibly for the spectators. But I'll go one step further and say maybe it's a visual reinforcement or a tactile reinforcement for the person performing that if they are using, energy in a certain way. This
Maybe.
motion, perhaps this is what they're envisioning that would actually move something. But again, I believe, as you do, or at least the way that you're mentioning here, that it's not necessary. And I think that, with people who are able to move things just by focusing on it, not moving, staying slow, or even, you could talk about the Tibetan monks who are known to levitate. No, we're not talking about, the guy with the stick sitting on there as an illusion. We're talking about actual levitation, or they've done audio levitation demonstrations that people have seen. as far as I know, there are no videotapes of this or any sort of footage whatsoever, and there can be many logical reasons that you don't have, a recording of this. I mean, you can't go to the town museum and take pictures of all their shit because, they have their reasons. Maybe it's the same sort of thing, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the phenomenon doesn't exist. It just doesn't necessarily exist in a utilizing fashion within our immediate reality.
I don't know, man. All I know, I mean, really, that's why this subject makes me angry, because there's never any good proof. There's a reason they don't want cameras in there, because people will figure it out, whatever. But here's a beautiful man. This is for you, Michael.
Aw, he's so cute.
Uri Geller, everybody.
Uri Geller.
Uri Geller.
There's a young
That's
man
how Johnny
in that
Carson
picture.
said. Yeah, that was when he was your age.
Yep,
40.
maybe. Well, he's a little younger than me, actually. 40. Huh?
Yeah. Yeah, he was young back there. And he's still doing it. That's the funny thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uri Geller is still out there faking it.
It reminds me of Bingham. Reminds me of Bingham, sorry.
Bingham records balloons and calls them UFOs.
But he also says that he can, draw or call UFOs to himself. He has an actual moniker that he calls himself by, doesn't he?
Yeah, the summoner, the UFO summoner.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and he's not. When you start videotaping balloons and calling them angels and all this other stuff, I mean, you're completely delusional at that point. Yeah, I don't buy it. Nobody's summoning UFOs. Nobody that I know can move things unless it's magic. But I can't say it doesn't happen because I've seen it. I've seen it happen. I've recorded it on my own phone. My dog's bowl moving 6 inches. And I posted it on Facebook, and everybody said, "You fake, there was a string." And I'm like, oh my God, I was just getting beaten up left and right. I'm like, well, maybe I better take this down because it's too, maybe I didn't present it well enough, which I thought I did, but I'm going to repost that. Yeah, because it's very interesting.
You should.
It was an accident, too. And when I vaped, see, I got a new phone. It was when I got my Samsung 8. Mm-hmm. It was a couple, 3, 4 years ago. And I wanted to see, because the TV was on, so I held up the phone and was recording the TV. So I'm watching the TV, but the lower part of that video, you can see my table that was in front of the couch, and my dog's bowl was on it. And when I blew out the vape, the bowl moved, and I didn't see it. And when I replayed the video and watched it back, I had to start my show in 2 minutes. So I saw that right before I went on my show, and I just about lost it. It was amazing that I saw the dog's bowl move. And why would it move? And even when my dog was passing away, there was an energy that was around him that was very weird, which I've captured on video in my closet. So
what did that look like?
Well, you've seen it. Well, the dog, when the dog was passing away, exactly at midnight, I was sitting on the couch, and he was really sick, and he was in the kitchen by his bowl, where he kept in front of the refrigerator. And, there's always a breeze that comes out from the refrigerator when it's on. So he would stay there, but the light above him, the kitchen light, flashed, and I heard it go, very loud energy. You know what that sounds like, a transformer getting hit. And it kind of woke me up out of a sleep, and I caught the last part of the flash. And then I looked over the counter, and there's the dog. And I think that's when he was taken from me. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't talk about that.
Yeah, no, that's fine, Rich. I mean, I appreciate you sharing this. I know that it concerns what it concerns, but yet at the same time, it's very interesting that this is like this. I had a rat terrier that I grew up with, and he was closest.
I need a minute.
Yeah, take your time. I had a rat terrier that I grew up with, and I was very close with this animal. And at one point, when I was in college, my girlfriend at the time had gotten me a gift for Christmas. It was a session with an animal communicator, which I was certainly willing to entertain, being interested in all of this, but I hadn't really had any experience with that directly. So, long story short, this person did a reading with my dog, and the biggest thing that I pulled out of this reading was that he was here for me, that he had actually incarnated to help me, through my difficult time of adolescence and growing into young adulthood, which I thought was very interesting. And still, today, it's a concept, but as I look back on his life and the amount of energy he imbued within me, the moments that he was there, as our pets generally are, the immense love he displayed no matter what happened, I have to agree that there certainly was an aspect of this. Now, when the day came that he got so sick and he just would not let go, I would tell him, I'd say, just go. It's fine. I'm here. We're good. You've done your job. Just, you can leave. And he just did not want to let go. He wanted to stay here with me. So, of course, it was to the point where his body was just, it was broken. Couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't hear, couldn't walk, couldn't keep, he was incontinent. You name it, the body had failed. And my mother said, okay, we're going to do this. So we brought him to the vet, and I was with him as he got the injection. And I was holding him in my arms, and the moment that he closed his eyes, what I felt was an energy go right through me, through my chest, and it just rippled all the way out to the very end of my extremities, to the very fingertips, the toes, the top of the head, just punched through me. It was this, oh God. The only way I can describe it is this charged electrical translucent wind that passed through me physically, but had momentum. And I knew at that moment that he had gone, but I felt the sense of peace when he popped out of that body, almost as if he said, thank you. And I know that sounds crazy, but this is the feeling that I had when I let this pet go. I'll say it outright. It's been mentioned before, but especially in this particular case. And those of our relatives who are suffering so needlessly in a shell of a body that does not suit them in any way, shape, or form to give them experience. Death can sometimes be the greatest gift you can give. And I say that with the most empathy and the most compassion that I possibly can, because I've been in circumstances where I've had to make that decision. And I feel in every one of those circumstances that I made the right decision. But you all may be forced with this, confronted with this sort of thing at least once in your life. So keep it in mind, and keep an open mind, and keep perspective when it comes to this sort of subject at large. It's really interesting to see where we can go when we stem off of some of these things. You want to talk about politics, sure, there are arenas to jump into. You want to talk about video games, yeah, we can go back into the past. But when you start talking about esoterics, the paranormal, remote viewing, healing, ufology, cryptozoology, anomalies that have to do with the celestial bodies, anything, they all seem to connect in one way, shape, or form, or they share similar attributes. Jesus, sorry for the stumble here. Very, very curious to see, and of course, this is what makes the study and research so interesting, and why I believe that even in our lifetime, we will see some practical application of the subjects that we just have conjecture about right now. I think within, again, our lifetime. And Christ, for all intents and purposes, I'm 40 years old. Maybe I have another 40 left. We're not getting any younger here, but at the same time, we certainly are moving forward in way of conversation, discussion, anecdotal experience, and in some cases, we are getting evidence that may be swiftly ripped out of our hands by somebody else. Long story short, we're still looking for that so that we can corroborate this on a larger scale, and we can give people something to really chew on, something they can practice within their own innate abilities that have been dormant for so long. But I think, Rich, when it comes to remote viewing especially, using this particular practice to, influence military gain or something like that, maybe inherently that's, it already knows it's not to be used for that, and we struggle with it. Maybe we're supposed to find a different purpose. But one thing that I was wondering, and this is the last thing I'll propose to you for the evening because we're running up pretty soon. We have a lot of events that have to occur, and we've seen this in different cultures, by and large through the past and even in our modern day. Things have to happen within the right time, right? Maybe celestial bodies need to align, Mars is in retrograde. There are certain times people decide to undertake certain magical practices. I wonder, and I've never heard anything about this before, I mean, as far as I know, it's an original thought. I wonder if there are many times that we could take advantage of perhaps a heightened sensitivity in way of energy, such as, Mars in retrograde, or Mercury in retrograde, sorry guys, wherein this type of activity would be heightened or we'd have closer access to it. Wouldn't that sort of indicate the same sort of natural function that we see and observe in way of the cycles of the moon, per se, or perhaps how a woman's body interlocks with that? Perhaps there's an intuition that, at 3 o'clock, maybe 3:19 on a Tuesday during the winter time, you'll be able to move something with ease, yet every other time you'd struggle. What do you think about that?
Well, it's not my field of expertise, but I've heard it every year of my life. I've heard that over and over and over. The planets are aligning, or it's that time, 26,000 years, every 3,600 years, Nibiru is going to get close and it's going to create this magical event on Earth, and we're all going to have psychic abilities or meet the whoever is over there. If that's true, I believe, planets were alive. I believe they die. Same with moons. I think that they're alive. I think they die. So if that's true and there's an alignment and it creates this perfect psychic energy, I haven't seen the proof for it. I've never... Yeah, I wish I could go back in time to the day that I did that trick with the record player and the smoke detectors. I know it was in the summer. Mm-hmm. I think it was August, but I'm not so sure. But I would definitely like to go back and see why that happened at that time. Maybe there was an alignment that made that happen for me. I was born March 10th, and it was just after 3 o'clock, 1968, and apparently it is a very, very psychic time to be born. I'm in the very psychic astrological part of the sign, if not one of the most psychic parts of Pisces. So, I told you, I never told anybody else, but I believe other people, I'm talking in most recent days, years of this experience we call life. Mm-hmm. I've never said it before, but I do believe that and this is why I don't like psychics. This is why I don't believe in them. This is why the JG connection doesn't happen out of my mouth. This is why John Edward is full of crap, and Sylvia Brown, she should be constantly like a rotisserie in her grave, constantly spinning because people figured it out. That someone like me believes in psychic abilities, but I believe it's a personal thing that we all have to endure. We all have to figure out and understand and maybe hone in your skills. And I think I have always been aware of that my whole life. And when I was in school, people would always come to me, and there was a rumor going around that I was psychic because my girlfriends would tell their friends about stuff we would do, and this isn't magic, this isn't anything. We would sit around and I would predict things for fun, and she would do it too, and then we'd see if it ever happened, and I was predicting a lot of cool stuff. And she got one right here and there, but I did that with all my girlfriends because it's part of my life. I like but don't believe in psychics, but some of them, there are legit psychics out there. I do believe that, but I believe they use their power for nefarious, I don't know, reasons. But I don't know, man. I met some people that are total bullshit, but yet I've met people that can read me and knew things, but they didn't get the most important thing of all that keeps me running, that keeps me going. Not one psychic has ever said this about me, and why they can't pick up on it. And when I'm saying it in my head to them, hey, say this is the reason I get up every morning. This is the reason I do it. And they can never pick up on the most important thing in my life. How they cannot pick up. And it was a tragic event that happened in my life. I lost my brother and, when I was 7. And that is something that drives me. I get up every day, to live and enjoy life. And I don't want my parents to have to ever go through that again while they're alive. So it's a driving force in my life and in our family. And, when you lose a sibling or a son or daughter, it's the most painful thing you'll ever go through. But I carry that with me every single day. And for a psychic not to even pick up on it is laughable to me. I'm like, how do you not know? So I use that as my litmus test on psychics. See if they get that right, I know they're legit. If they don't get it right, everything they said before then is just luck, guesswork.
Yep. It's a good thought, and you may come up against somebody one day who does pick up on that. I would think personally that would be pretty prominent within the reading, depending on the direction of it. Most times readings are guided by the universe or spirit, what have you. They're going to give you the information that you perhaps need at that time. But with that being said, I think that in way of validation, it would be much more impressive if they were able to give you something in the way of that particular subject to give you more insight and perhaps allow you to listen a little bit closer, with that validation that maybe this is the real deal here, and what they're giving me in way of message can be better well received. Certainly there's things about psychics that I have gone to that have sort of twisted me up a little bit, saying, all right, well, none of that actually resonated with me at all. And maybe it was what it was. I don't know if the person was off that day or they just legit couldn't read it. I think there are some people who don't take the time to differentiate between what vivid imagination looks like and intuition. They're very, very different. It's almost the same difference as dreaming and waking, without the, a question of which reality are you sitting in. But at the same time, again, people can have very vivid imaginations, and they can pick up slight things off of people, not even consciously doing it in any sort of manipulative sense, but they're just picking up on these little hints. But you want to talk to somebody who's getting the full scale, who's actually channeling, not just, picking stuff up off your arc field and showing them to you, but actually channeling this information directly to you. And it takes a very versed and clear channel, somebody who really knows what they're doing and has been working on it for years, in most cases, in my experience, to actually be able to afford you that experience.
I was looking at the chat, and
did I miss something?
No, I just want to answer something. Joe Marcus says, you're closed every time you mention psychic, your aura darkens. They obviously just didn't hear what I just said. That's remarkable to me that you can't even hear what I just said. I'm closed-minded. I'm the most open-minded person I know. It's just I know bullshit because I think, personally, and Jimmy Mack said it, everyone has the ability, I think is what he said. I'm trying to find it here, because it was interesting, and I wanted to say it, but it kept moving so fast tonight. Let me see if I can find it. Nostradamus was the real deal. Anyway, I can't find it. But said something. Anyway, I'm not closed-minded. I'm very open-minded. It's just Daniel Scranton, the guy who goes, trying to tune in with his arm up in the air like an antenna and squeezing the point on his chest to dial in. Come on, man. That's theatrics to me. You don't need to do that shit.
I agree with you on that.
It's total buffoonery, and I don't appreciate it. And that's what I don't like. I don't like people like Sylvia Brown, John Edward. I think they shame real psychics. They ruin what is real. That's why I'm mad. That's why I don't like them. And that's why I may seem closed. There's no darkness around me. If people really knew me, I know what I think, okay? I know what I'm thinking every day. I'm the happiest person in here. I may say something different because that's my emotions coming out. But in my mind, I'm very open-minded, and I think I am extremely positive, even though it doesn't seem that way. I am extremely positive. I just want the truth, and I'm tired of being lied to. I've been looking and found one psychic and she called herself a witch. Out of all my years on this planet, there was one person who was very close in her reading on me, and it was done at a bowling alley. I just told the story a couple of days ago. I'm not going to tell it now, but she got a lot of stuff right, and it was pretty cool. She got all my friends' stuff right. Her kids, she says she had her two son and daughter come over, and inside this part of their hand, when they turned it this way, was a 5-pointed star. Mm-hmm. That was in their skin, like a fingerprint. Her mm-hmm. mother had it, and the two kids did this, and you can see the 5-pointed star. It was pretty weird. Mm-hmm. And I do it, I don't see it. But, for people to say that, they just don't know. They think that, darkness is around me, because I played with the Ouija board. Hey, man, I'm a researcher. That's how open-minded I am. I am getting out there and doing something. I am trying to keep this going from year one, when I was a child, walking down the street, walking my dog and imagining, so I thought at the time, what was going on in the houses as I walked down the street. And, I just was able to see in these houses what people were doing. It was weird. Even though it was my imagination, why would I do that as an 8, 9-year-old? It doesn't make sense. There was no, there wasn't a lot of this stuff on TV, and here I am doing it just naturally, trying to see what's going on in people's homes. So to say that I'm closed-minded, that's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But other than that, I'm closed-minded when it comes to bullshittery, and I'm open-minded when it comes to the real deal. And that's what I do. That's what GUFON is. We try to bring the truth out. And I know more than what I'm telling you. That's why. That's why I may seem closed-minded. I guess it's because I know more, and I think I have a right to talk shit about these people because I think I'm one of them. I think I have that ability, not to move things, because I definitely can't do that, but I think I have the ability. I'm an empath, I know that for sure. Absolutely, without a doubt, I walk into a room and I feel people in, and I don't know where that came from in my life, but I've been doing it forever. And you can walk into a room and feel the energy just go like the hair on your ears, and it's like you just tuned into something. It's very bizarre. I can't explain it. I really can't. It's like somebody, when you're in a car that has a lot of bass and you can just feel it. It's kind of like that almost. Yes. But at a much lesser volume, yeah.
Well, I mean, essentially we feel that because there's air moving. That's what sound is.
Yeah.
It's air molecules pushing up against each other and moving. So perhaps, in certain ways when we get into these spaces or we enter a room like that with so much energy, it's acting in the same way that perhaps air moves, or we're feeling it in that same subtle way. It's just much more subtle. Obviously I think that these subjects are, something to continue to research. I have to piggyback on you and say, yeah, I think you're one of the most open-minded people that I've known. And yes, of course, there are certain things that you and I might talk about in our private conversations that, we may not talk about publicly just yet. And perhaps we're still thinking about them. Perhaps we're still digesting the experience, or we're in question about what it was that we just, had gone through, or whatever the case may be. We're not giving everything out on the table all at once here, and certainly we have to keep some things, under the critical umbrella until we're comfortable to be talking about them in that way. I mean, it's very important to be analytical about this. You hear us talk about this all the time, guys. We'd say keep critical thinking at the helm. It's so important because it's easy to get lost in that right brain perception, in that magic, in that wonder, in that imagination, which is very real and much easier to kind of jump out into because the world is so mundane and, bland in comparison. We got to keep these feet grounded. And if we can bring in some of that other energy and concepts and ground them here with us and give that physical proof that it does work within this reality, God damn it, that's what we're going to do. But we're going to wait until we can do something along those lines, or we feel, comfortable about bringing out certain experiences that we've had. Took a lot for Rich to talk about what he spoke on tonight. Took a lot for me to say what I said about what I had done tonight, because they're emotional experiences, and yet they are something that personally happened to us, and we are convicted within that experience. And this is what we always say: the disclosure, whatever it may be, whether it's UFOs, whether it's cryptozoology, whether it's paranormal, most likely will come as a collective with people continuing to have experiences at whatever frequency they pop up. People are having these experiences. They're convicted they saw X, Y, and Z. But again, don't always jump to the conclusion about what you saw, because what you may have been shown may not actually be the familiar thing that you know of. Maybe something way outside that box, and you'll miss it by already putting it into a box of what you do know.
This
Rich.
type of disclosure will never happen, though, Michael.
Mm-hmm.
There's not enough people out there. This isn't on mainstream media. This is on the Lifetime channel and on History Channel and Scientific America maybe once in a while, but Travel Channel I know does shows like this.
Mm-hmm.
It is one of the most difficult topics on the planet to have any evidence thrown your way to say, "Oh my God, I believe in telekinesis now." Never. I don't think it'll ever happen. Not in our lifetime.
Well, I think that, let's put it this way. Yeah, you have certain shows that showcase this stuff, but as people understand how practical some of these concepts might be and be able to apply them in their lives, or see that this is something you've already had, it's almost like somebody showing you that you have an extra arm that you never knew about. It was on the back of your neck where you can't really see. You always felt a little weird when you laid down. You never really knew why. You just accepted it. But hey, guess what? You got another arm back there. Oh, really? How do I use that? Well, first you're going to stretch it like this. And, obviously we don't have anybody guiding us through in that way. But it's akin to an innate ability, something that's been latent within us for so long that perhaps now we're starting to explore it. So honestly, Rich, it's my turn to say I don't know where we're going to be going with this, because tomorrow something could come up. Or it could be 50 years, 100 years from now that we move forward, in way of the awareness and collection of this information and how it applies to us as a whole, or at the very least, which begets the whole, personally. Mm-hmm. So,
personal. It's all personal. It's whatever you think is happening. And that's the thing. Who do you bounce this off of? It took me forever to find somebody like you to talk about.
Same here.
I mean, there's other people I've, spoken about, but I never told them details like that, Anyway, I appreciate you having me on to talk about it, because, I didn't know what to expect tonight, to be honest. So it was an emotional ride.
Whenever you come on Dark Hour Paranormal, in one way or another, you're going to have a good time. We're going to have some good conversation, and it might get a little heavy here and there. But, I want to thank you, from the bottom of my heart, as I always do. And this gratitude is sincere, not only for coming on the show, but being such a great friend, dude. We really don't have much in way of life when it comes to certain connections. But when you do find that, and you're able to share these experiences and go deep within the philosophy and, have the other person not only keep up with you, but, going above you and bouncing back other, theories and concepts that challenge you. That's what it's all about, guys. And, of course, Rich, I'm going to open this up for you real quick. I'd like you to let everyone know where they can find you. And, of course, I think you'll have, what's today? Today's Thursday. You'll have a show tomorrow night on GUFON, guys. If you're not familiar with Rich, go and check him out. He'll be on at 9:05 Eastern Time. And you can check him out, once again, right here on YouTube. But, Rich, go ahead. In your own words, tell us where we can find you.
You just did.
Well, you're also on...
I know, I'm joking. I'm also on Third Phase of Moon, but really Third Phase UFO Report, which there will be starting tomorrow. Lots of reports coming out just about every other day. And you can find me there. And GUFON, of course, 9:05. Well, usually it's between 9 and 9:05, but I've been trying to get back to 9. I don't know why I need it at 9:05. I just don't know. I like that extra 5 minutes.
I think people do too, man. I do.
I don't know. I don't know if YouTube likes it, but anyway, that's where you could find me here on YouTube, 3 different places, and also on Facebook and Twitter under GUFON as well. And that's it. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Very good, man. Well, again, I thank you for coming on the show. It's always a delightful time. We always have such great conversation. I see that folks in the chat have really enjoyed this show. Holy shit. Frapsap. Good Lord. Thank you, brother, for the $50 super chat. My God, man. Well, I'm going to have to keep this up for a little while. I'm not going to let that go the way it is, man. We're going to have to let that run out. But, hey, listen, man. Holy hell. Thank you so much, bro. And keep in mind my invitation to you to come out to Bridgewater Triangle here within the next month or so. I'd like to get out there and, take an overnight, as I discussed, rent a hotel down there. We're going to, go through some of these spots and at least get the initial outlines of the documentary that I'm putting together. So keep that in mind, Frapsap, and let me know what you're working with in way of schedule. But, dude, thank you so much for your $50
That's
super
cool,
chat.
man.
It really supports the show, and it means I'm getting paid this month. Thank you. Thank you so much, bro. Holy crap. Here we go. We got to acknowledge everyone here. Mr. Big Feet with the $1.99 super sticker. Looks like Harry from Harry and the Hendersons. Awesome movie. I was just talking about that with somebody the other day. Thanks so much for that donation, brother. I really appreciate it, and really creative super sticker, certainly relative to what we're doing here. GG Abby Lynn, thank you so much for being here on the show. And, of course, your $9.99 super chat. It's $10 super chat, guys. It's $10 super chat. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that support. You guys are fantastic. Rich, you're an absolute legend, whether you realize it or not. Your epitaph will be like 5 or 6 gravestones long. Maybe we should get you one of those standing monoliths that, is higher than anything else in the graveyard when that day comes. Either way, we'll all be carving our names into your headstone. With that being said...
Hey, look at this.
Jesus. My goodness. You guys are absolutely blowing me away tonight. World in Chaos.
Nice.
With the super sticker, $9.99. Nope, $10 super sticker. Bro, thank you so much. That looks like a pretty ominous super sticker. I dig, man. Really dig. I'm going to tell you guys right now, there's a construct over here at the Yale campus in Worcester. It's called Skull Tomb. Okay, it was actually constructed many years ago by some electrophysicists who were dabbling in certain electromagnetic research. Now, what they did, and I'll cover this at a later point, but it reminds me off the top of my head quickly, we were talking about where things might be situated. It's actually built on a meridian or some type of ley line on purpose, and I'll cover that a little bit. I just thought that was interesting that a modern construct has been proven, and obviously within the scale was intentionally built on a line within the earth that would generate certain electromagnetic fields. But anyway, listen, it's been a 15-hour day for me in total, and Rich has been on God knows how many shows today. But listen, I want to thank you guys all for being here. Rich, I'm going to take you off for a moment. If you don't mind, say my proper goodbyes. You know how it goes. But thanks once again for being here, brother.
It was a pleasure. See you guys next time on DarkHour Paranormal.
That's the new outro, guys. I'll record it and edit it up.
Thanks, man. It was fun.
Thank you, Rich. Guys, absolutely amazing show tonight. I really thank you all for your support. It really means a lot, man. One of these days I'll be giving up this day job that I had to work 12 hours at and, just come home and do shows every night for you guys, interviews every night, premieres. That's where we're going. And, with your help, we get there faster. And I cannot express my gratitude enough for what you guys do, not only for the super chats, but your presence here is really highlighted every time I see your faces or, your icons, avatars, whatever you'd like to see. Guys are awesome. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight. I really hope you enjoyed the show, and we will be back probably over the weekend. I think I'll be dropping something on Third Phase UFO Report, so keep your eye out for that, maybe Saturday or Sunday, and then we'll be working towards shows out into next week. Again, we have a few people lined up that you will enjoy, so again, keep your eye out for that. And with that being said, folks, I'm going to go to bed after I have a bite to eat here and get up and do this all again tomorrow. So, once again, thank you so much. We're going to, as Damien from Black Lotus says, we're going to get out of here for the night. If you haven't checked out Black Lotus Productions, go ahead and check them out. They do some pretty cool interviews. They get some really neat people. And, I won't say that there aren't times that I haven't reached out to some of those people too to have them come on DarkHour Paranormal, but that's what it's all about, guys. It's about networking, and of course that's what we do, and we're becoming masters of it. But once again, thank you, super chatters. Thank you to all my moderators. Thank you, Cashew Gesundheit, for making sure that I was awake when we were to go on air, and thank you for your support, every single one of you. It means the world to me, and I make these videos for me, but first and foremost, I make them for you. And if we can enjoy these together, believe me, when I'm sitting here watching the premieres with you, or I'm going through the interviews, I'm also an observer and a participant at the same time, just the same way you guys are, just in a different way. Thank you so much. Let's get ourselves going here. What the hell did I do? Oh, there we are. All right. Until next time, guys, stay inquisitive, stay sharp, and as Third Phase of Moon says, keep your eyes to the skies. And while you're at it, everywhere else around you, bring a flashlight. Ciao!